One thing that felt like such a foreign concept for me for years, and I still have to actively remind myself to do this, is celebrating my own successes. It's so easy, especially like living with perfectionist tendencies, high achievement tendencies, to only focus on what you need to do, what's lacking, what do you need to focus your energy on that isn't going well so you can change that. And focusing on successes was just something that I would like push down. Like if I felt like if I focused on what was going well, it would cause me to let up on the gas pedal of pushing forward. And it would almost be like I'd be starting to go easy on myself if I'm honestly celebrating what I've done. And it feels like a warped mentality unless you felt like that and you live with perfectionist tendencies and high achievement. It seems kind of crazy to say like how hard it is to recognize what you've done well and your growth and your success. But when you're stuck in those tendencies, it's actually hard to really recognize the things that you have done well because you're so negatively driven and you're so focused on everything that you need to do and you're task oriented and you just consistently grind and keep the pedal down and go. And it is not really in the forefront of your mind to start to reflect on what has gone well, because it seems in a way that it's not going to serve you to keep pushing harder and harder and grinding harder. And so for me, I remember a time a few years ago, and I was already working through some of those perfectionist tendencies, but this was a year after I had my first son. And I wanted to get back into doing triathlons. It had been a few years since I had done one, and signed up for one with one of my friends and decided to do this triathlon. And it was exciting. Like I was excited to do it. And so I do the triathlon, finished it. And instead of recognizing that, like, wow, you just accomplished something pretty big. Like you had a child, a year ago, and now you're doing a triathlon and it's been years since you've done one. Like my initial reaction was to be like, oh, that time was terrible. I could have done so much better. I used to do so much better. I was comparing myself to how I was a few years prior. And it really just warped my whole mentality around that. Instead of recognizing that, like, wow, you said you were going to do something, you maintained your integrity, you actually showed up for yourself, you trained for this, you did it, you completed it. There were so many things to celebrate in that moment. And while I wasn't like completely coming down on myself, like I truly enjoyed that moment, but my initial reaction was to look at the time. My initial reaction was to be coming down on myself, like you're not in the shape you used to be in. And so it can be really challenging to celebrate those successes. And so something that I've implemented and I want to share with you is that I now am more intentional with recognizing the things that are going well. So I'm really big on doing just quick journaling at night. I'm not like, I don't make it one of those things that feels daunting. I used to do that. And journaling was one of those things like, oh, I don't need another job to do. I don't need something else before bed that I have to do. But for me now, it's doing these just small little journal entries where it doesn't feel daunting. It's just something quick that I get in there. And part of that is asking myself, what went well today? And just that question, when we ask ourselves the right question, what went well today, it starts getting our brain trained to recognize what actually went well and to start to celebrate those things. And for me, that's been a really big game changer because now every day I have an intention in recognizing what went well. What did I do well? What was good enough today? And those questions that we ask ourselves, especially right before bed, really help to retrain our brain to start filtering out the things that don't serve us, the negativity, the noise, and now start allowing the things that do serve us and celebrating ourselves and being our biggest advocate to come into the forefront of our mind. And so I want to share that with you because I know this is such a struggle. I have struggled with this for my whole life of just coming down on myself, criticizing myself for every little minute detail that did not go well, even though 99% of things could have gone well. I would focus on the thing that didn't. And I know how crushing that is. I know how paralyzing that is to live with that mentality. And unless you've lived like that, it's hard for some people to even understand that, because from the outside, it may look like you have everything together, you're happy. And a lot of times it's not how we authentically feel. So to celebrate our success and recognize what we are doing and recognize the growth. And I would say that's really the biggest thing, because success is not a finite goal. It's not like you get to this point, you're now successful. It's recognizing, like, am I a little better than I was last week? Am I a little better than I was last month, last year, whatever it is? Are you growing? And that's the biggest thing that we need to start celebrating and recognizing ourselves, is that the smallest little details that exhibit growth, that's what we need to start bringing our attention to. Because when we focus on our growth and we recognize our successes, in the brain, it actually has a scientific basis for why it keeps us going. So every time we recognize success and we celebrate ourselves, we actually get a little bit of dopamine. And that dopamine is that reward center. And when we have that reward center and dopamine going through our brain, it increases our drive and our motivation to keep going. And so this was such a game changer when I learned this, because the whole time I was being my worst enemy by not recognizing what I was doing well. I was suppressing the dopamine that would be helping me and rewarding me for continuing on. So when we start to recognize the growth, our success, and the things that we are doing well in our life, we're actually rewiring our brain to recognize more of it and causing our brain to secrete more dopamine, which keeps our drive going, keeps us motivated, keeps us in the game, and keeps us feeling rewarded. So there's a lot of benefit to recognizing the small successes. And I want to emphasize small, because this was also something that for such a long time, I thought it was like those big moments, like, oh, you graduated. Okay, you can celebrate that. Oh, you were able to buy a car. Okay, you can celebrate that. It's not those moments. It's those small little things that you start to recognize your own growth. And for me, it may be like someone cut me off and I didn't have this big reaction. Like I just kind of allowed it to roll off my shoulders and not let it ruin the rest of my day. Like that can be a sign of growth, that you're more in a regulated, harmonious state. So whatever it is, maybe you took 2 minutes to go outside and get some early morning sunshine. That's something to celebrate. You took a moment for yourself. So whatever it is for you, start recognizing those little things that you do every day that are things to celebrate, that you are taking moments for yourself. You're moving yourself in a better direction. And now you can start recognizing what you are doing that is successful and is working and is good enough. So I hope that serves you throughout your day. And I really hope it makes you think a little differently about what you're doing. You're doing a good job. And I want you to start celebrating that with yourself. And once you do, it will change the way you view your life and change the way you move throughout the world. So if you found benefit in this episode, please share it with a friend. Let someone else also gain this benefit of recognizing their own successes in life. And I want to thank you again for joining me today and being part of this community.